24th. I'm joined by my prompt colleagues, Councilmember Joe Buscaino and the Honorable Dennis Pizan.
Joe's honorable too.
Well, Joe is newly honorable. He's not 35 years honorable. Yeah. All right. I'm going to see if we can clear the room with some of these items. If my colleagues agree, we'll go ahead and call on consent. Approve items 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, and 15, unless any of them wish to call those special. We'll also do the same for item 11, except for I believe I have a substitute language on a technical correction somewhere. To instruct the city administrative officer to report to the city council with an analysis of the proposed contracts with the vendors selected to prepare the Arroyo Street evaluation plan and the commodity points of distribution plan will be the substitute language.
Number 6, I want to call special.
6 will hold.
The rest is fine with me.
Okay, and the rest will be on consent with 11 having the substitute language. Where does that take us?
Morning, John White, City Clerk. You have 2 commission nominees here before you today, items 1 and 2.
We'll go ahead and take item in those orders.
Item 1, communication from the mayor relative to the appointment of Mr. Rafael Bernadino to the Board of Police Commissioners for the term ending June 30, 2017.
Bernadino, thank you for coming this morning, and
It's good to see you.
honored that we had the opportunity to sit down and discuss your appointment, your past history with the city, your involvement, why you want to do this, but want to go ahead and share that with my colleagues and the public as well. So if you can give us a little bit of your background and
Of course.
tell us why you want to do this.
Okay.
What do you bring to the table?
Very briefly, my name is Rafael Bernadino. I've lived and worked in the city my entire adult life, except for a brief period of time when I worked at the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C. I'm a graduate of USC and USC Law. Our firm is headquartered here in Los Angeles. I'm a partner at Hobson, Bernadino, and Davis. And we do our very best to employ people within the city of Los Angeles, always. Previously, I've served on the Proposition Q Citizen Oversight Commission that dealt with the construction and refurbishment of police stations, fire stations, and paramedic facilities. And most recently, I've served on the Police, Fire, and Pension Commission, where I hopefully have contributed some of my efforts in regards to ensuring that our members, policemen and firemen, and their beneficiaries receive all the benefits that they have earned and deserve, and while at the same time reducing the cost of the city. And my effort in reducing cost of the city has been in trying to achieve greater returns on investments that the pension board makes, and to steer or urge my fellow commissioners to hold our investment people to a higher standard and hold their feet to the fire more often than not. I'd be very honored to serve on this. I think the Police Commission is probably one of the most important things in the city of Los Angeles. I think obviously the police department is responsible for the safety of the people of the city of Los Angeles. And if you have a good police force, if you have a safe community, you have a wonderful community. You have a community where people can live good lives, where businesses can thrive, where people can reach their goals in life. And my hope would be that I'd be able to contribute in a positive way towards that. The area that I think that I will contribute the most to, however, I was speaking with Councilman Buscaino a moment ago, and I discussed this. I said, you know, these are professionals. They've done a great job, and I think the numbers go to that. The area, however, where I don't think our numbers are that good have been in the areas of losses, what has been called risk management. And that's an area where I think I might be able to draw some attention to and draw some focus for. And that's an area where I will endeavor to work very hard at. I think our numbers on this are not good, to be honest with you.
If you can just give a little bit of detail and on when you say losses and risk management and our numbers aren't good, specifically, what are you referring to?
Well, there's two aspects to this. There are the losses that are caused by what are called civil rights violations. There are losses that are caused by traffic issues. There are losses that are caused by employment issues, and there's general liability.
When you
There's
say
also
and on losses, you're referring to life or financial?
financial losses.
Financial.
Losses. As I said, my focus isn't on the police force's role in protecting and serving. I think that they do that in an outstanding manner. And like I said, I think their numbers, particularly over the last decade or so, are dramatically demonstrate their effectiveness in that. These losses are in the tens of millions of dollars. The other area that I'm specifically holding out is the area of workers' compensation. We have losses of workers' compensation $65 million a year. And, Councilman, respectfully, it's every year. It's around that number every year. The numbers of workers' compensation claims that are made is approximately 3,000, and it's 3,000 every year. We have a police force of 10,000 officers. You know, that's 1 out of every 3 people making a workers' compensation claim. And workers' compensation is the losses that the city pays out from that, because we're self-insured, as you know, are greater than all the other liability losses. If you add up car accidents and civil rights and employment and everything else, they're less than the workers' comp claims every year. And I don't know what the answer is to this, but I do know we need to focus on it. I do know that if we focus on it, we will find answers. This is a department that is great on metrics. As from what I haven't been on it. I'm just learning in the last few weeks. And it seems that if you give this department targets and metrics, they will hit them. And I think we just need to focus our efforts there. And while I will do what I'm supposed to do in regards to ensuring constitutional policing, community policing, good relationships with the public, and I'll speak on that in just a moment, and be an eyes and ears for the public, this is an area that hopefully I'll be able to use my skills and experience in. And when I say use my skills and experience in, just the workers' comp numbers. And, you know, I've been a partner in large and medium-sized and small law firms for 25 years. I've probably had several thousand people work under me and work in my businesses. And we've never had a workers' comp claim, ever. And we pay the insurance every year. And I think part of that is we would routinely ask people what they thought, what should be done. And we'd get input. And if it sounded like it would be safe, we always did it. And more importantly, we had a good relationship back and forth with the people who worked for us. And so, you know, we're going to have injuries. We're going to have people get hurt. We're going to have car accidents. We're going to have problems that at a certain level, you know, when you have a population this size and police officers doing the difficult work that they do under very difficult circumstances, more often than not, there's a certain level of accidents will occur and people will get hurt. But I think these numbers, to my mind, to my eyes, seem to be out of proportion. And when I look at other places around the country, they seem to be out of proportion. And so that'll be the area that if you talk to me 6 months from now, a year from now, that'll probably be the first area that I talk about.
All right, thank you very much. And those are a lot of things that we talked about as well that you shared and what your focus is going to be on the commission. And I thank you for that and all the ideas that you also brought to me when we met. So we do need to focus on this. There's no question. And I appreciate you sharing all that information and and what you hope to work on and focus with. Mr. Zine, do you have any questions?
I do. Your name reflects a bankrupt city.
Pardon me?
Your name reflects a bankrupt city.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand. Well, no, I don't know what their situation was over there, but I think that this city, quite frankly, I was a little bit critical on our pension stuff because I wanted us to have greater returns, but I said something that I think I might have shared with the councilman in England when I met earlier is we've done some great things. I mean, this city, it's a very difficult time for all cities in America. And
Well, I was referring to the city,
Oh, yes.
city of San
San
Bernardino.
Bernardino, yeah.
Mr. Zine's name refers to Dennis the Menace.
no,
so it's okay.
No, I understood
You want to
that.
hold it against him.
Okay, no, I was going for that anyway. I noticed your community affiliations, Asian American, Asian Pacific, Filipino, Hispanic, Italian American, Mexican American, Association of Investment Company. You have the full focus of the Los Angeles area in this region, that we are an incredibly diverse community
Absolutely.
here in this region. And the connections that you have, your affiliations, is commendable with that association, because if we have something that occurs, it's important that we have that relationship with the ethnic communities, and we have many ethnic communities throughout this city of Los Angeles. Being of the Middle Eastern descent, I understand that connection and how there's an alliance, and you've got a broad focus, which I commend you on that. The issue that you mentioned on the pension system, I know that the pension dollars aren't what we wish them to be. There's been some controversy about that. A lot of the cities, San Diego, San Jose, they want to reduce pensions. I know a retired sergeant from Oakland Police Department, he's retired, and he was notified that his pension benefits are being reduced. Normally, it's the people who are going to be hired, not those that have already retired. So there's a lot of issues with that. But now you go into the new arena of the policymaker of the Los Angeles Police Department, which is a huge responsibility. When I look at the city of Fullerton, what happened in Fullerton, when I look at Santa Ana, what happened in Santa Ana, one incident sparks an outrage, and we saw what happened recently in Pacific Division with a skateboarder, and they tried to, get people upset about something. And coming from law enforcement, where I spent now 43 years, I understand the challenges on the street. One of the concerns I have with the officers is that the compensation package of new officers, we cut their salary $10,000. They're now starting at $44,000. And if you look at that compensation package, you take out your pension contribution, you take out your medical, you take out your dental, you're probably in the $38,000, $39,000 range. Now, maybe in South Dakota, that's a good salary. Out here, it's a challenge. And if we look at what's happening with bankruptcies with officers, foreclosures on officers, the financial aspect is really hitting a lot of the younger officers. Now, when you reach rank and you've been around a while, that's really not impacting, but our new officers are having those challenges. One of the concerns I have is that as soon as they get that opportunity to go to another department where they can receive additional compensation, they want to serve the public, serve law enforcement, something we need to look at. So how do we balance the dollars with the consistency and maintain that professionalism so they can pay their bills and not end up going into default, which it used to be when I joined the department in '68. You show your LAPD, you get credit anywhere. I mean, it was golden. No longer is it the case because the compensation's been reduced so much. The issue you touched about on risk management, I've been a critic of the risk management within the police department, where not external, where there's a shooting, where there's a collision, but internal, where you've got the internal problems. And in West Traffic, for example, 2 officers received $1 million apiece because it went to court and there was an issue about a quota. Now, the vehicle code says you can't establish a quota. Somehow the jury ruled. These 2 officers received $2 million. And then a whole bunch of other officers say, well, you know what? They got their $1 million. Why don't we jump on board? Risk management's a huge issue. I know the department's trying to make some changes in that, but that's a huge issue. The work comp you talked about, another huge issue. So you've got a keen focus on the reality that a lot of people want to think doesn't exist or ignore. So I commend you on that. But that risk management, and they put a risk management person in place, I haven't really seen a dramatic change, but we need to do that because there's only so much in that pot. And when we're paying out, that's fewer dollars for the officers who are working to get the compensation that they rightfully deserve. The issues on training, they called about perishable skills to maintain those. I know that in Fullerton, they came out with this report, the perishable skills, the training. And as the commission of the police department, you are the policymakers. You tell the chief what to do. I mean, he runs the organization, but the policies come from the police commission. The issue about driver's license and enforcement and impoundment, that's all issues that the police commission really has that responsibility for. So I support, looking at your background, you've got a lot of history, a lot of background, a lot of knowledge, but to bring that into play with the commission and with the officers, and we have officers here who are in uniform, work the streets, work the assignments, try to protect and serve. And then this morning I heard driving in, they had a shooting in New York.
Right.
And apparently some of the shots fired by officers hit innocent people trying to take down the assailant. At least that was the report I heard on the news. So then they're going to start condemning the police officers. But the bottom line is they're trying to protect people. And some wacko guy starts shooting some old boss that he's not happy with. I think 8 people got killed in the exchange of gunfire. So it's a dangerous profession, as we know. But they look to the commission and the commissioners to say, let's set the policies, let's set the guidance, and let's set the support. And when they want to criticize them for doing their job, people need to stand up and say they're doing their job, and their job is to protect and serve. And sometimes it's not real pretty, but the fact is that's what they're doing to try and make it work. Do you have any relationship with the Police Protective League, the union that represents the officers?
I don't have any relations. I've obviously met them at times at the pension board, but I don't have a relationship, no.
Okay, I would suggest that might be another opportunity for you to meet with them, since they represent the rank and file from police officer through lieutenant, the ones who are on the streets.
Yeah. If I may speak broadly
Sure.
to 2 points, and I'll
Sure.
be very brief, is in terms of communication, and I plan to make that something. I've been very fortunate, and in my practice, I'll have the time to dedicate to this. I don't think I could have done it 10 years ago.
You what?
I don't think I could have done this job 10 years ago, but now where I am with my practice, I can spend the time and energy, and I have the time and energy to do it. And in this regard, there's 2 things in terms of communication. One is I'm fluent in Spanish, so I hope that I can reach out to the Hispanic community and be an eyes and ears. I live in the Valley.
What part of the valley?
Sherman Oaks.
You got to
So-
move further west, into the 3rd council district.
Okay. But hopefully I can, attend as much stuff in the Valley as I can to give the Valley folks a voice as well. But I think my most important voice is with the police officers. And I'll just give you one very brief story, but I think it reflects how I feel about things. Is right after I got appointed to Prop Q, I just happened to run into a couple of officers and introduced myself and said, I'm working on Prop Q. And they alerted me to a problem we were having at the Northeast Station with, they described it as a very bad station and officers getting sick, possibly.
Cancer and dying.
Right, environmental issues.
Right.
And being an environmental lawyer, my ears perked up, and I said, well, we got to look at this. And reflects how I did things is I talked to people, I looked into it. We had plans to do HVAC there, and we talking with my other commissioners, and we did a tour out there, and we showed them, and eventually we decided that we're just going to rebuild this station. We're going to build a new Northeast. My point is, that would not have come to us but for 3 officers who were kind enough to speak to me about it. And I took their concerns and followed up, and hopefully somehow we were able to find the money to do this. And so, my email is on the internet, my phone is always answered, or there's a voicemail or something else. And so I will hope that any officer, rank and file, to the chief that wants to speak to me, my door's always open. And if there's an issue that's brought to my attention, I'll follow up on it. And as I did there, I followed up on it quietly, and we got what we needed to get done, and hopefully we're going to leave that illness problem at Northeast.
No, that's important, because I remember my time with the department, that was a huge issue. And Nancy Dyer, God bless her, she was an officer at Foothill, at Northeast that passed away, and that was one of the issues with that cancer, and there used to be a photo lab. And
Right, it used to be a photo lab, and it still had, it wasn't designed to be a police station.
Right,
I don't
right.
think.
They converted it.
I don't want to cut off the conversation, but we do need to move on. We've got to- Do you have any other questions?
I'm not done yet. I'm not
Is there
done
a
yet.
question
So
in your statement?
You follow in the heels, the footsteps of Mr. Scobin, who's now a fire commissioner, who went out with the officers, who spent a lot of time dealing with them, and they appreciate when you make those appearances. When you go to roll call, when you go to a station, that means a lot to them. And you 3 of us have served in the Los Angeles Police Department, so we've got a close alliance with that. So I think you've got great qualifications. Your risk management insight is critical. because those dollars that we can spend on benefits and salaries for the officers instead of spending them in the other litigation areas. So I think you're more than qualified for this challenging, it is a challenging position that you're willing to assume, so I commend you for that.
Thank you for your kind words.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your willingness, Commissioner, for stepping up and wanting to serve the finest police department in the world. And I just had and it's great to have a numbers guy on the commission, especially when it comes to risk management. I know we have the RMIS system that's in place. That's something maybe you can look at as well and kind of dissect and see the measure of effectiveness of the risk management system that we have in place. I know you mentioned a little bit, for me, community-based policing is so important to me. We can really attribute the success of our crime reduction numbers because of our relationship with the community. And you mentioned it a little bit briefly. What's your thoughts on the community-based policing philosophy?
No, I think it is marvelous, and I'll speak from my own experience. I've lived in this city my entire life, and there was a time in this city, within my lifetime, where I think a lot of people felt that the police were not on their side, and particularly in minority community. And I think that has changed. I think one of the great indicators has been, we have a very diverse police force in terms of representation, women, Asians, African Americans, Mexican Americans, gay officers, and I think that level of diversity makes people feel that it's a part of their own force, number one. Number two, I think the leadership of the police department, to my mind, I said I'm a civilian, looks to be outstanding. I think Chief Beck has been a very great chief as far as I'm concerned. I think Chief Bratton was a very good chief. I think Chief Parks was a very good chief. And so in my adult lifetime, I think that we've seen not only at the officer level diversity that reflects the community, and therefore that feeling that the police is a community, but I think at the leadership level as well. And I agree with you. I think community policing is probably one of the factors that's been resulting in the declines. And I think the other is just smarter law enforcement. I mean, I look at the stuff they do over there, and it's, state-of-the-art type of stuff.
I would suggest this. I think you're going to get appointed and go through the process without questions. However, maybe my former SLO partner here can attest to, at the divisional level, I rarely saw a police commissioner come to the police station, come to roll calls, get in the black and white, and do a ride-along. I would suggest and strongly encourage you to do just that once you get appointed. Spend some time with the cops on the ground and get to know the officers, get to know the command, at the patrol level, patrol function, and just spend some time and get into a radio call, get into a car, handle some radio calls to get a good sense of the police department and how it's run on the ground. But that's something that I often question as a police officer. In the last 15 years, I always thought, we respect the police commissioners. They run the police department, the civilian oversight, which is a critical component of the police department. However, it'd be good to see them more on the ground. So something I would encourage you to do once you get appointed.
Councilman Englander suggested that as well when we met,
Good.
and I think that is a very good idea. And I would think that would be a normal function for me to do.
Yeah.
Set up on a routine, rotating basis to go to various places and meet folks, but not just so they can learn, so I can learn what they do. I trust what they do. They're doing their jobs, but so that they can get to meet me and I can hear whatever concerns and things they have from the ground up.
Right.
So that would be my hope.
Thank
Do
you.
we have a recommendation from colleague?
And move the matter forward.
Go ahead, move the matter forward.
Yes.
So moved. And
approved.
we'll see you in council on, do we have a holding date?
Yes, next Friday, August 31st.
We'll see you
Thank you
August
very much.
31st.
Have a good weekend, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Where does that take us?
Item 2, communication from the mayor relative to the reappointment of Mr. Diego A. De La Garza to the police permit review panel.
This is a reappointment
Yes,
that
I've been on the
correct?
panel for 7 years.
for 7 years. How many cases have come before you in 7 years?
Too many to count.
Too many.
Thousands.
How many have you turned down?
Many.
You're as tough as nails, aren't you? All right. And so tell us a little bit about yourself and why you want to do this. What'd you get out of it the last 7 years that you hope to change or reflect on or bring to the table in your next 7?
Well, I've been doing this for 7 years, and it's something that I really enjoy because I enjoy service to the city of Los Angeles. When I started, I didn't request to be on this panel 7 years ago. I basically asked to be able to serve the city in some way. And I was placed on this panel, and it's something that I've really enjoyed. What we do is we do the approvals, the denials, the revocations, and so on and so forth of the business permits that are usually high-risk businesses, a lot of them that have to do with vice. And it's something that, I've taken very seriously. I've really learned the regulations around these businesses, and I've tried to, and I've taken it very seriously. I've enjoyed working with the police department and with the staff and with the people in the city's attorney's office. It's just been a great experience, and that's why when the mayor's office asked me if I'd like to be reappointed, there was no hesitation. I said, yes, absolutely, I want to do this more.
Well, with your business background and, running a public affairs company and then also having your political background, which is extensive, and I applaud you on that. Oftentimes, I look at appointments or reappointments from the political side saying, okay, we've got to get out of the politicizing these appointments. Mm-hmm. But what you bring to the table on this particular panel is great because all politics are local. And when you're talking about police permits and you're talking about the impact of revocation, and that's because of a nuisance property or something that's been affecting either the neighbors or council office or legislative office or all the different various components that you've worked on the political side, that's the part you get, the constituent issues, the business issues, the impacts to communities, and that's what this panel really deals with. And so you bring both sides to the table, which is unique, where that background is actually a benefit and not a liability. And so I just want to point that out, that with all the things that you've worked on in the past, I think you bring a lot to the table and you've done a great job. You certainly got my support. Anything from Mr. Zine, Mr. Buscaino?
No questions.
I noticed that Mr. Bill Kill, who's a friend of mine, is on that commission. Also, Ricky Gelb on that commission with you. One of the issues that came up was on parking lots. Mm-hmm. And $26 million is owed to the city parking lot owners that haven't paid their bill.
Something that Mr. Gelb is very a strong advocate on.
Very strong. And Mr. Gelb owns half the San Fernando Valley.
Right.
And
Mr. Zine owns the other half.
Call Ricky, give him a free plug. But the issue that came up, and I was very focused on collecting the dollars, and Mr. T-Fank, and we worked together to change the process. The alarm permits was another issue where people aren't paying. We haven't really been consistent. We need to modernize our process and modify so we can collect those revenues, not additional taxes, but what people righteously have to pay. And when it comes to the permits that you folks issue, it's obviously a huge task with a city this size, but the revenues that come along the way go to the general fund to help pay our bills. And I would just caution you on that we need to pay more attention. And if we have to put liens on property or whatever the case may be, to make sure these people pay their fair tab. I mean, the city's now proposing to increase the parking tax from 10% to 15%. And my concern is there's already $26 million we haven't collected that's due. So we're going to go ahead and increase it. Let's collect what is owed us. So all those permits and all those issues and the regulatory aspect that this particular commission has, I would just give you direction, if I could, on the issue of finances, because the city, like everything else, is struggling, and if we can generate more dollars out of there without increasing fees, but collect what's due. And I know Mr. T-Fank has been working with the Department of Finance to try and make some changes, because basically the right hand didn't know what the left hand was doing. We're trying to bridge that so we can be more responsive, more effective with that.
Thank you. 5 years ago, when I went before City Council, you had asked me about the cafe entertainment permits, and you told me to be more vigilant with those permits. And it really struck a chord with me. And since that time, I had really done a lot of work to ensure that those permits are done to the best of the department's ability. And I think it's made a difference, and I think I'll take this advice to heart and work with Mr. T. Fanks and Mr. Galvin. And this has been an issue that we've had to deal with for a long time, and I do think that there's a way to fix this problem.
No, I agree. I know the cafe entertainment issue, we've had great success with that, because the officers that are in the field get the complaints, they keep them going to the same place, they keep having the same problems, the fights, the shootings, the this and that, and then they want to abate the place. And meanwhile, I would say, hey, wait a second, we're going to yank your permit because you're causing disruption in the community. So if they want to run a legit place, fine, but if they want to run a place that's going to cause disruption in the community, and I've had some in my district, we've had to go and yank their permits just because they didn't want to be good neighbors. And cafe entertainment sometimes can turn into a real negative in the community when you start having the problems that penetrate into the area. So it's great. There was one other issue I noticed, that you were the City of Hope, Director of Government and Community Relations, City of Hope. I just became a member of the Board of Governors of City of Hope, so I saw that flagged an issue. They recruited me into that, which is a great organization. And people who have cancer know how good the City of Hope is. So obviously you've done well looking at all of your activities. One thing that struck my mind here is that you were Director of Opposition Research at the California Democratic Party. I need to talk to you about some of that stuff.
All right.
See
So
how you find that
we're going to go ahead and cut Mr. Zine's time now. So I'm going to go ahead and make the recommendation that we approve Mr. De La Gaza with one.
He's got lots of talents.
With one change, Mr. Clerk, that we also accept Mr. Zine's friendly amendment of approval to work with the next controller of the City of Los Angeles on the financial aspects of this appointment and the board and collecting all these fees and fines.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right.
Thank you.
Fees and fines.
All right. Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you.
Next item.
Item 3, motion Englander Buscaino, instructing the police department to report relative to the false alarm program, including number of alarm dispatches, number percentage of false alarms, number of addresses with multiple false alarms, mechanism for informing false alarm bill recipients of availability of alarm school, opportunity to appeal a false alarm fee, and criteria for granting an appeal.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Richard T. Fank, Executive Director of the Board of Police Commissioners, and with me is Senior Management Analyst 2, Eva Vega, who is the supervisor of our alarm unit. I will be responsive to the motion and brief, and then I'll leave time for questions with all of you. Number of alarm dispatches. I'd like to go back to 2003. In 2003, there were 168,000 alarm incidents, which resulted in 107,000 dispatches. Of that, 102,000 were false alarms, or 95%. Take another snapshot of 2007. 85,000 false alarm incidents, dispatched 61,000, false alarm 51,000, 84%. Now I'd like to move forward to 2009. July of 2009 is when our new software system, which is called Crywolf, became operational. And what Crywolf brought to the table is an integrated system that integrated with the CAD system that our PSRs operate off of, the police service representatives and communications. It also interfaces with the LA tax system, so that when an alarm company reports a false alarm to communications, immediately on the dispatcher screen will pop up whether that is a permitted alarm or not a permitted alarm, and the number of responses to that alarm that have occurred over the past 365 days. The current ordinance, what was adopted in 2004, provides for 2 alarm responses in a rolling 365-day period. There are no free alarm responses. Everyone must pay for each false alarm. After 2 false alarms in a rolling 365-day period, it is what is called a non-response or a broadcast and file. What will occur if you are at your number 3 alarm? The dispatcher will broadcast that call, and if a unit buys the call, responds to it, and it's a false alarm, then you are billed. If a unit does not buy the call and does not respond, you are not charged a false alarm fee. Unless someone calls in and says, at 12344 4th Street, which is the address you have that alarm call to, I see someone breaking in. That's a verified response. We do respond to those. So after 2 alarms, there's no response. unless an officer buys the call when it's broadcast and filed.
Do we charge on that if there's somebody there?
No, sir, we do not, and I'll speak to that in just a few moments. With Crywolf, we were able to do a number of things. As you saw, in 2003, we were at 107,000 alarm responses. In 2008, that had dropped to 66,000. In 2009, when we came online with Crywolf and the integrated system, before Crywolf, the dispatchers had no idea the number of alarms at a location, so that they just kept sending resources. So we had resources going. We had an alarm billing system that was not integrated. It was sending bills to the address where the call would have been. So if the call came in at the intersection of First and Main, that's where the bill went to, First and Main. 50% of our bills came back under the old system. And Mr. Zine is well aware of this, having heard this before. But 50% of our bills would come back to us. So we had this huge account receivable because we could not collect monies because the bills were going to unknown addresses or bad addresses. With Crywolf, we resolved that. It's based on a geo file. It will validate addresses, and we have this integrated system. So with that, we have better management of our resources. In 2009, there were 59,000 alarms dispatched. 50,000 of those were false, about 85%, again, false rate. 2010, 53,000 false alarms were dispatched. 45,000 of those were false, 84%. 2011, 52,800. And of that, the false alarm activations were 41,800, 79%. Each year, we're reducing the number.
We don't have a written report.
No, sir, I was asked to give a verbal
These
report.
numbers. Okay, is there anything we can get that?
Sure, I can provide you.
That for the record?
Sure, I can do that for you, sir. The piece I'm getting to, though, is through the management of the system and giving the information to the communications folks, we have reduced the responses to false alarms. We have increased the reliability of the response to a false alarm, and we have saved tremendous police resources. With that said, the number of alarms that we have responded to at addresses was another question we had. The one alarm for addresses in 2009, 53% had one alarm, 21% had two alarms. So 74% of the universe in 2009 that we responded to had one or two alarms. In 2010, 24,000 had one alarm and 9,200 had two alarms, or 80%. 2011, that went to 83%, and 2012 year-to-date, 85%. So what we're seeing is that we're seeing the universe of multiple alarm responses decrease, and we're also having just one and two responses to alarm owners. The issue then as to the mechanism for informing false alarm recipients that they have had a false alarm. When officers respond, they're to leave a notice at the door that they have responded to a false alarm. That is just a notice because at that time, the officer who leaves that notice does not know if a bill is going to be generated or not. That could have been due to a power surge, power outage, telephone line outage, or something of that nature. Every morning, our staff receives from the communication section the listing of false alarms. They go through, they validate those false alarms, that it is a valid false alarm based on the information presented to them, and then they will generate the bill, either the first bill or the second bill or the subsequent bill if there have been more than two false alarms. When the person receives the bill, on that bill will be an informational letter that describes to them the ordinance, describes to them their responsibilities, and describes to them their opportunity to take alarm school. We did have a situation that occurred in January of this year. Staff brought to me a proposal that we look at what we were doing as related to alarm school. In the past, we allowed non-permitted subscribers to also go to alarm school. 81% of our universe of alarm subscribers do not have false alarms. Our false alarm universe mainly comes from non-permitted alarm holders. So we wanted to get them into compliance. So with that, we made the decision at my level, at the staff level, that we were not going to offer alarm school to non-permitted account holders. Non-permitted account holders also have a $100 fine because they do not have a permit. That currently exists in the city ordinance. So in January, to have our vendor make that change, we had to remove from the letter the fact that Alarm School was available. That was fixed in February or March of this year. The software vendor fixed that system to allow online Alarm School only to permitted applicants.
If I could take a step back, just so
Sure.
I get the full history of this. When did Alarm School come to be, and how did it come to be?
Alarm School came to be originally in 1996.
And it came through what mechanism? Was it a motion by a council member?
No.
Was it an ordinance? Was it,
The staff thought that it would be a good way to reduce people having false alarms.
so it wasn't the police commission that had come up with it was staff that came up with the idea, made the decision, and then hired a vendor to implement it?
No, it was just done by our staff. The staff put together a class. It was held at Old Parker Center. It was held about once a quarter, and they limited it to 60 people a class. In 1999-2000, it expanded to offer it in South Los Angeles and also in the daytime.
So there was no approval necessary or needed to get the idea of waiving the fee if you had a class in lieu? In other words, if they went in lieu of paying a fee, they took the class, so you didn't need any police commissioner or council approval to say, because these were funds going into the general fund.
I can't respond to that, sir. It predates my time frame, and there's no records that I'm aware of that could be responsive to your question. We continue with the Alarm School. 2006, it was expanded to the Valley and throughout the city. And the classes range from about 60 to 120 people. At that time, Alarm School was just done in person by our staff. It was done on an overtime basis. And it dealt with our old system, not with Crywolf. So when Crywolf came into being in 2009, the vendor said that they could prepare an online alarm school for us, so we had them create the online alarm school, and that was the evolution of the online alarm school. The piece, as I mentioned, in 2012, in January 2012, we made the change to not have non-permitted account holders be able to take the online alarm school. We removed that from the letter, and it was an administrative oversight when the system was fixed to allow that. We didn't put it back on. Ms. Vega caught that in July of this year, and that has been put back on the letters now and is available for the subscriber. When they receive each of their letters, they receive 3 letters when you have a false alarm. First letter tells you have to have a bill, who to call, and alarm school information. Second letter says you're delinquent, alarm school information, and gives you a time frame to pay. Third letter is a city attorney letterhead, same thing. You have to pay or it will go to collection and officer alarm school.
And not that I'm familiar with these letters, but you've shared them with me, and so I've seen that they all do have that information. I appreciate it, and thanks for catching the error. I think what triggered this originally and getting the phone calls was the media story as well, that some folks were getting the fines, weren't aware of alarm school. It was, when the change occurred, the accident, if you will, of it taking it out of the letter and not putting it back in for those few months was really the only thing that happened. Did we ever have the opportunity to go back to those folks who received a fee in the letters during that period of time and let them know, or even the ones that paid the fine because of the letter but it didn't have the alarm school information, to let them know if they still wanted to go to alarm school that we can reimburse them?
We did not, but I believe they had ample notice because of, of being able to access the school. We looked at the numbers, what occurred January of 11 through July of 11 and January through July of 12. In 11, we had 2,745 people take alarm school. In January 12th, 2,315 people take alarm school. So we think the information was out there because our staff also receives hundreds of phone calls a week from folks.
Does that include online as well? Online school?
Yes, sir.
And in person, those numbers?
Yes, sir. And our staff receives literally hundreds of calls a week from folks that, I've got the bill, is there anything I can do? Yes, you can do alarm school. If you do alarm school, we'll waive the first fee. And
It sounds to me, first of all, I want to applaud you on, everything that you've done in not only putting the program together, making it available online, trying to get all the folks into compliance, but also having the ability to not have any fee. I mean, unlike traffic school, if you get a ticket and you can go to traffic school and you can do that online, you still have to pay the citation as well as the traffic school. Right. The alarm school is free, and you waive 100% of the fine.
Right.
I don't know of any situation that has anything like that. It sounds to me that there was an error in when the change was made, and I agree with the change of not giving the ability unless they come into compliance and have the actual permit for the alarm. That makes sense.
Well, one thing we're also going to do is, I went back and spoke with Ms. Vega after I spoke with you, council member, and it was your suggestion, and thank you for bringing it to my attention, that on the department website, lapdonline.org, it has police commission. If you click on the police commission, then it takes you to information about LAPD Alarm School. But if you don't know where to look, you can't find that. So we've reached out to LAPD Online and asked them to put an icon on the front page of the homepage.
Fantastic.
And they hope to do that here in the very near future, and that'll take people directly to the LAPD Online Alarm School. And thank you for that suggestion. Hopefully we'll have that fixed within the next few days.
It sounds to me as if most of the story was a false alarm, but I appreciate...
The one last piece I do want to bring, and it speaks to Councilmember Zines' spot that he talked about before. 2009, we had 128,000 permit holders for alarms. Obviously, we know there are far more than that. Today, we have just under 200,000.
Permit holders.
Paid permit holders, and that is an increase of over 70,000. And the way that has occurred is when we get a false alarm to a non-permitted subscriber, they receive the bill. The base fine is $151. They pay another $100. They pay $31 to get a permit, and that then gets into compliance. They also receive a letter telling them that it is a violation of the city municipal code to have an alarm without a permit. We're very aggressive in working with the alarm companies. There's also an ordinance that mandates alarm companies ensure that a subscriber has a permit before they install an alarm. As we find out, we go back to the alarm companies and try to get them to understand the importance of that from the perspective of taking care of their customer, but also to ensuring that we are receiving our revenues relevant to alarm holders. And again, it gets back to the number, 81% of our alarms do not come from the universe of permitted holders. So if you have an alarm permit, you're going to be more responsible. So,
Okay, Mr. Buscaino.
yes, sir.
Officers are still giving out those yellow slips, right? The false alarm notices?
Yes, and they also give out this piece of paper
In
here.
addition to that?
Yes, sir.
Just a couple,
Mr. Zine.
on the permits, an alarm company is required to apply for that permit for the
No.
subscriber?
They're required to ensure the subscriber has a permit. It is not their responsibility to get it, but it is their responsibility to have the subscriber either demonstrate they have a permit or to assist the subscriber in getting a permit, which they can do online.
And we're getting compliance with that?
Generally, we are. Again, there are going to be times when we're not getting compliance. The only time we know you don't have a permit is when you have that first false alarm.
But I thought at one time we discussed having the alarm company, like when you go buy a new car, that dealer's going to register that car with the
Right.
Department of Motor Vehicles for you. I thought at one time we discussed the alarm company would be responsible to get that permit and charge that subscriber that.
They're responsible to ensure that the subscriber has a permit,
And if they don't,
then to get the permit for the subscriber. That's what the
have
ordinance
we ever
says.
done audits to see if they're doing that?
We've done an audit. Again, it comes down to staff time just to be able to deal with that. I would say that in recent time frame, in the past year, we're seeing good compliance with that. Where we're finding people without permits are folks who have had an alarm for a period of time and never had a permit, and they have that alarm, and then we find out that they don't have a permit. They get the letter because we found that out. But the vast majority of people that do not have a permit have had those alarms for a while.
Okay. So we are getting more compliance.
Oh, yes, sir. You can see by the increase of over almost
Yeah, you're doing a great
75,000
job.
in permits.
Okay, excellent.
Okay, thank you
That's
very much.
$31.
Sir?
$31?
Yes, sir, $31.
Okay.
Excellent, thank you. So we'll go ahead and receive and file the
Thank
item.
you, sir.
In the future, if there's something you can submit that shows how well we're doing with the statistics, that would be great. And then we'll receive and file that with the recommendation that you also perhaps look at that audit recommendation and work with the next city controller on that as well.
Okay, very good. Thank
All right, thank you. That takes us to item 4.
Item 4, motion Englander Buscaino instructing the police department to report relative to the status of the fingerprint analysis backlog.
Morning.
Morning. I'm Yvette Burney from LAPD. I'm the commanding officer of Scientific Investigation Division. Latent Print Unit is under my command, and I've brought with me my Tech Lab officer in charge, Chuck Siegler, and the officer in charge of our Latent Print Unit, Denise Williams. And we're here to respond to the motions asking about the latent print backlog. So let me give you a little bit of background.
Please.
The latent print unit has a total of 96 authorities, including some clerical. Currently, we have 27 vacancies. That leaves us with 69 people total. Over the last few years, of course, we've been subject to the hiring freeze like everybody else in the
How many
city.
vacancies you said, 26?
27 vacancies total. Like the rest of the city, we've been subjected to furloughs for the last few years. The latent print folks have suffered 208 furlough hours per year. So that equated to about 7 full-time equivalents. Fortunately, this year, it's a little bit better. They are subjected to 40 hours for the fiscal year on furlough time. That equates to about 1 body. So it's a little bit better this year. Basically, their capacity for analysis is about 380 cases per deployment period. We primarily focus on all the Part 1 crimes. We do those automatically. The rest of the capacity goes to other crimes, which is mostly property crimes. So we have roughly about 110 Part 1 crimes that are done every deployment period, and about 270 other cases.
Do we have any written reports on this at all of what you're walking us through right now?
I submitted a fact sheet. I'm not sure that it made it to you.
It did not. Did any of my colleagues get it?
No.
It did not make it to this. I've got a lot of questions on this.
Okay.
This is one of the most important things that we do to solve crimes. Out of the 380, how many, if that's what our caseloads are per DP, out of how many are actually collected, how many are in the backlog? I think we need a written report first before we can actually go through, because I think all of us have a lot of questions on this. We'll go ahead and continue some of this now, but I'd like to bring it back at the next Public Safety Committee, once a written report of what everything you're describing is. I think a lot of us are going to also have questions on if this backlog were where it's been right now. On the Budget Committee, we didn't hear about any of this. LAPD, when we asked their priorities, it didn't bring forth that we had these kinds of issues. When they asked for budget authorities, when they asked for any vacancy positions to be filled, none of this came up. And so I think we're all a little puzzled that the numbers are what they are. And so if we want to go ahead and continue this, but what I'd like to do is actually set aside some significant time in the next Public Safety Committee meeting and really go through the numbers that you're going to be submitting, so we all have time to ask questions and do some additional research as well. But
Sure, be glad to.
Please.
Okay, so based on our capacity, we have roughly 270 cases per DP that we can do as far as property crimes go. We collect far more than that every DP. So what we've come up with as a way to prioritize that work segment, we've given about 10 cases per DP to each area and specialized divisions, and they can go through all of their property crimes and come up with their 10 most pressing cases and submit those, and those will be done. We are assuring them that they will be done. Anything that does not make their top 10 per DP goes in a separate pile, and if we have extra time, we'll attack those. But more than likely, our backlog is going to continue to increase over time unless we get some relief on the staffing.
Or reprioritize other services. And it's not just about the staffing, because we also have, I don't know if you utilized volunteers to come in to help with the backlog. We've got 650 reserve officers in the city of Los Angeles that could easily be trained and are looking to do things that are outside of a black and white. And I know that I get those alerts every month on the details and asking for specialists to come in or volunteers for reserves. I've never seen this call for help.
We
listed?
we would not be able to utilize them. If you look at the class specs for this classification, in order to do the work that they do, it's a 5-year training program. You can't just get somebody off the street to do this work.
And so that's what we need to analyze. If you can bring forward as well as what the training is, if there are subsets of that where there may be elements that can be broken up to, we've got to tear this apart to rebuild it.
Sure.
Clearly what we're doing right now isn't working. The backlog is unacceptable. And this is critically important because, as we all know, while it may be theft and burglary and petty thefts, it may be burglary from motor vehicle, it may be GTAs, it could be whatever that might be, we know that those crimes lead to other serious crimes. We know also that a lot of these are folks that are, typically if somebody commits one of these crimes, they don't just commit one. We also know that. And the only way to establish these patterns, the only way to have a good database is to ensure that we're processing all of them. We also know that these crimes oftentimes will lead to unintentionally other crimes, felonies, and whether those are violent felonies, whether those are murder, attempted murder, somebody breaks into a home, they have no intent to harm the individual living there at all. They just are tweakers or whatever that might be. They want to grab some things and leave. They don't think anybody's home. They door knocked it, nobody answered, and then all of a sudden the little old lady is home alone and was just too scared to go to the door or couldn't get out of bed, and suddenly it turns into something else that it was unintended to, and somebody gets hurt or killed. And so, but we could have stopped it sooner because we, years before, the same person perhaps left prints at a crime scene, and just because of a backlog, and we said it's not a priority. Well, when lives are on the line, it's a priority. And so we really got to get our arms around ripping this apart, looking at it from the basics of what is it every step of the way in terms of this 5-year training program. How do we get more people, whether they're reserve officers or volunteers or funds, into the system, or maybe a combination of all of those elements to make this a top priority. And we cannot let folks know in Los Angeles that there's this backlog, but they're not a priority. Your crime was not a priority. They're all priorities. And so with that, how soon do you think it would take to have a written report of all the numbers, the backlog, all the numbers you're going over, but also the training elements, what goes into each step of that training, and what it would take perhaps, and from there, before we put together any plans to rebuild this process, just to get us up to speed of where we're at and really how big this problem is. I want to know how many cases are, you said we process 380 per DP. How many do we get per DP? Where do we get them? I'd like to know where they come in regionally, right, like a breakdown by region as well. As many statistics and information so we can make some informed or come up with informed questions first. And before, we don't know what the problem is. It's hard to fix something if you don't know exactly what's broken. We just know it's broken. And so I think we need all that information so we can start focusing on this with a lot of attention, and maybe even bringing in some experts to help you along with putting a focus on this and trying to figure out how to solve some of these issues. Mr. Zine.
Yeah, well, this reminds me of the rape kit situation.
Right.
Where we had an incredible backlog of rape kits.
Oh, I think
and
everybody's
they were
aware
ignored
of
for
that,
a long period of time, and controversy, and money came forward, and we caught up. But then when we look at this particular situation, when you look at the volume that's coming in, and I know the officers try to apprehend the suspect and to commission the crime, they don't do that for whatever reason. Prints come out, they take the prints, it sits, and the victim says, does anyone care about my crime? And it's really a disservice to the public, as our chair says. If we're doing 10 cases per month, I mean, that is really a slap in the face of the taxpayers, that we need to somehow do better. Now, I don't know if there's technology, computers, whatever the case may be, And if I were to ask what the backlog is, it's probably a number that we don't want to mention, but I'm sure it's horrifying. And victims are the ones who are suffering the question. And we know that the perpetrators commit more than one crime. They just don't break into one house or one car. And these victims are suffering the consequences. So just like the rape kit, the controversy got the department additional funds to get things done. And I know it's a more extensive process and the DNA analysis, et cetera. But this situation with Prince, and item number 5 is the motion that I had. We should combine it with number 4 to get back to comprehensive and what we need to do. But we can't keep managing the police department by crisis, one crisis after another. Well, we take money from this pot to put to that pot and that pot to that pot. And when you got furloughs, and I understand people only work a certain number of days and hours and then, they collapse. We need to do a better way of serving the public. And while crime is down, how many perpetrators are still committing crimes that are not being caught? And the detectives are frustrated because the victim calls the detective, why isn't this being done? And then the victims get upset. And then 109 realignment, 30,000 people coming back to commit more crimes. I mean, we got like a merry-go-round and it's not stopping. So I agree with my chair. It's more than just a simple response to the motion, number 4 and number 5. We did do a comprehensive analysis of this. But for the folks that are in the field who investigate those crimes, that's one aspect. And then the detectives that are frustrated because the victims keep calling them, why isn't this done? Why can't this be done like it is on television? And you solve the crime and you get the guy and put him to jail and everything's happy. I mean, LL Cool J has to catch his own burglar in his house. Thank goodness for that. But the fact of the matter is, what our chair is reflecting on in motion number 4, item number 4 and number 5, is another monumental situation that's going to generate a whole lot of questions and issues, and we need to have that in how we're going to address it. We can't keep ignoring it. But again, with 109 realignment, and I've spoken to our district attorney about it, there's a whole lot of people coming back, and what they're doing is they're coming back to commit the crimes that they're used to committing, and it's not going to be better. And we want to keep the crime stats down, so we need to take care of the blue suits in the field, as well as the detectives who are trying to apprehend, and as well as the victims who are paying the tab. So I think 4 and 5 continue and get this whole comprehensive thing back. And Joe, you know from your experience.
Yeah, I echo what my colleagues are saying here. I've seen it most recently a little over a year ago. Even some of the frustrations I had was a call out. It's taken so long to sit in a 459 investigation and wait for someone to dust the knob or the window. It got to the point where at the Harbor Division we had to wait. We actually had to pull an officer out of the field to lift prints for us. So I understand, Ms. Bernie, you have a lot on your plate and you're doing a lot more with less resources. But this is like Mr. Zine said, this is we owe it to the victim that has been victimized with the burglary. What is, with or without prioritization, as far as, are you prioritizing, more of the sex crimes or property crimes? Are you just basing it off what the division's telling you to do, to lift?
Well, we get our calls mostly from the divisions, so we lift whatever they ask us to lift. But as far as analysis goes, all the Part 1 crimes, so that's your homicides, your assaults, your sex assaults, your robberies, those are automatic. We do those no matter what. So we're getting pretty good turnaround on those, pretty quick. What is it, less than a month now?
6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Harbor took a hit last year with our property crimes, and that was one of the frustrations we had. Luckily, the year-to-date numbers are great. We complete turnaround. I think we're like number 6 or 7 in reduction in property crimes. But I echo what Mr. Zine's saying. With this realignment, these knuckleheads, they'll just go back. These low-level misdemeanor offenders, they'll go back to what they know best.
Right.
And then just breaking into homes, breaking into cars.
We totally understand that, and we're trying to work within the resources we have. One of the other pieces that I'll explain in the report that we sent back to you is the reinstitution of the old ALPO program. I know probably Councilman Zine remembers that. I don't know if you two remember that, but it was the area latent print officers, and that's exactly what we're doing, what you say happened in Harbor.
How,
we're going to be asking
how soon do you
officers
think
to
it would take to put this report together and get it back?
Probably about a couple weeks.
Couple
Give
weeks?
us a couple weeks, we can pull it together.
So we'll go ahead and we'll schedule the item for the next Public Safety Committee. If at that time...
One more question on that. Do we still have the Alpha officer? Do we still have that program?
We are reinstituting it right now.
No, but we don't have it now.
Have it now.
No. Let me give you
See,
just
that'll increase your load, because now you've got more prints being taken, and then you got to do the analysis.
Not really.
No?
No, what we think will happen, and let me give you just a little bit of background on the ALPO program. If you recall, it was canceled sometime in the 90s. There was a civilianization program that went through, and they had a lot of officers collecting prints back then. And there was a civilianization study, and they decided that it made more sense for civilians to collect. So they increased our table of organization by, 38 positions? Yeah, I think it was. So we got 38 print officers, or fingerprint specialists, to come in and do that and let the officers go back to the field. Well, with the vacants, we've pretty much lost all of that. So we're back to, we got to have the officers collect. We don't believe that we're going to get an increase in the number, because we would have collected those anyway.
But we would have taken that, I remember doing that as a P3. We'd investigate, take the crime report, and we'd actually take the prints at the scene. We wouldn't have to wait for someone to come out. It was fresh. And we'd process them. I remember doing that, and it was a very effective program. You didn't need to have this, you're already there.
Right.
It was very efficient to get it done right there at the time, and not have to wait to send someone out. So I don't have any problem with saying whatever resources and the kits. I remember those kits that we had, we got trained on it, and we would lift the prints and submit them, and lo and behold, bad guys would go to jail.
Right.
So
I think we've got to revisit everything.
Yeah.
And then we also have to look at, I think Mr. Buscaino made a good point, looking at other best practices. What are other departments doing? What about utilizing technologies we don't currently have? Those are all the things we're going to begin to examine. Let's start, though, with just getting the numbers. Where are we at? Let's get our arms around, just the facts, man. You know, where are we at today? And so with that, we'll go
And
ahead.
why does it take 5 years to go through this training process?
Well, that's what we're going to get. I want to know what the training is.
I went through the training, and it did take me 5 years.
Yeah.
But you weren't doing the analysis.
I was a motor sergeant,
Doing
that's why.
collecting, yeah, dusting and collecting is fairly quick training.
Well, Mr. Zine started the program with J. Edgar Hoover, who started collecting fingerprints. It was John Hoover who actually started the fingerprint program when he was with the FBI, but we won't get into his history. So we'll go ahead and move item 4 to the next, just 4 to the next public safety. The chair's discretion to move item 4 to the next public safety scheduled meeting, and 5 will be a receive and file.
Well, we didn't answer the plans on 5, though.
Yeah, we did, because 4 is a duplicate. So, with that, Mr. Clerk, where does that
To
take us?
receive and file item 5.
Yes.
Only remaining on the agenda is item 6, CIO report relative to a police department contract with Cell Plan Technologies Incorporated for a 3-year term with 2 one-year renewal options for the installation of a wireless camera surveillance system in the 77th area.
Now, this is the item Mr. Zine called special. And was, morning. How are you, sir?
All right, great.
I believe there might have been some information in here as well in terms of that you didn't want to share publicly because of surveillance information and because of sensitive information as well. That was a different item, not this one. Okay. Mr. Zine.
The question came up, Cell Plan Technologies, they've established other cameras in the city. And there's a contract that is now underway with Topanga and West Valley. And the question came up with a commissioner is, why aren't we dealing with a company in California versus a company in Florida? If someone could answer that. Or a company in Los Angeles versus a company in Florida, where I understand Cell Plan is a Florida-based company.
Sir, my name is Sandra Russell. I'm with the Los Angeles Police Department Application Development and Support Division. Cell Plan is actually has a location in California, in San Diego.
Where's their headquarters?
Their headquarters is in Virginia, sir.
In Virginia. Are there any local companies that we've asked for bids on these programs?
This actually did go out to bid, sir.
Did we get any local companies? Because a commissioner brought that to my attention, that we're not dealing with local companies that deal with this type of technology.
Jason Kleinoff, the CAO. The RFP was released in 2008, and Cell Plan Technologies was the winning firm. I'll have to go back with the department to see who else submitted bids for this proposal.
Because apparently there's other local companies based in Los Angeles, headquartered in Los Angeles, that are in the same business. And the question is, why are we doing business with a Virginia-based company or a San Diego-based versus something in the city of Los Angeles? And the other question regarding this, is this able to connect with Racer, with the technology they have at Racer Division?
No, sir.
Why?
Cost prohibitive. The system is actually fed back to the station, and all video is there stored at the station.
So we have Racer that has the technology as far as monitors, and when I met with the department representative, a sergeant who deals with this, he said the plan was ultimately, all these installations taking place around the city, that it would be able to link up with Racer, and they'd have a central location where they could then tie them all together. That's what the department sergeant told me.
Which department sergeant? Do you
I
remember?
don't remember his name, but he's the one who deals with this from the department level.
I'm sorry, this is Commander Regina Scott from Information Technology Bureau. And Councilman, you are right, and that's another entity that is working on integrating all of our camera systems so that it would have one place, so that it would integrate into one system where we would have one entity that would be overviewed. But in this particular project, that's in the second phase, and that entity that is handling that and coming back to for Englander to give the recommendation as to how many cameras we have, what capabilities they currently have. Are they either in an analog or a digital? They're out of pocket, and so they're not here today. So we'll be gladly to come back and have that discussion with you. But these cameras that we're putting in will be for Harbor, but they will have a capability that we'll be able to connect into Racer, but not in this phase of implementation.
Because the understanding is different camera systems, different parts of the city. For example, New York today at the Empire State Building, they had a shooting go down. And it'd be nice to have the central headquarters be able to tap in, if they've got cameras there, to find out, so the command staff can decide what kind of deployment they need to respond to that situation. As I understand it, going through Racer, going through the DOT operation, where they have extensive camera operations citywide, the ultimate plan is to have the capacity to link them all under a major situation, earthquake, whatever the case may be, that they have the central command to be able to focus in on that, and they would all tie in. Because it's nice to have it at the division, but a broader scope when something goes down, and you need to have that ability. So you're saying it's going to happen, but it's not happening in this phase.
That's correct, and we have that unit, and you remember we were here,
Yes.
think about.
We're waiting for the report to come back
And he
down.
asked us to do a report, and so what that unit is currently working on is going throughout the entire city, taking a look at all the camera systems that we have, what their technology currently is, and how we can take that technology and put it into one integrated system. As you know, years ago, everybody went out and got their own camera systems, so we have a lot. Yeah, exactly. So we have a lot, and so this is a huge undertaking. I know from Maggie, when we get that report back, she's looking at for the 13-14 budget, she's going to put something in so that it would, so we can have that kind of plan. So we are looking into it, and I don't have all the answers for you right now as to what that looks like, but Sergeant Dan Gonzalez, he's in charge of that, and so when they get back and they're in pocket and we're ready for that report, we certainly will bring it to this council, because you asked us to do that.
Coming back to this committee, one of my concerns with this is, while the funds have been identified, without that comprehensive analysis done and the strategic plan to find out if we have the interoperability amongst all the cameras to make sure that we're utilizing technology that is seamless and works together. The problems we've been having with different types of camera systems is a council member or a community group or whoever that might be, or even the department, might identify funds and purchase a camera system for a particular area. Well, then those camera systems don't work, and we have a false sense of security when a community thinks they've got cameras in a park or a location. Then we have to come back and identify funds to either fix those or put them online, or the media gets a hold of it and rips it apart and saying, we've had these cameras, and we've sunk in tens of thousands of dollars, but they're inoperative and they're not working, or they don't link up with the system. This is just adding more. While these might work great, we don't know if they work holistically with the entire system, and without having those uniformed policies, IT policies in place with exactly what we're doing, and it has to fit within that framework. I think it may be a little too premature to move forward with this without having that first, because we're just adding more cameras to a system that we're not sure exactly the direction yet, and we're waiting for that analysis to be done, is taking. And while, I think there's a lot of folks that want to get these done and to claim that they have the cameras there, we're going to come back months later to say they're not working, and by the way, the technology changed, or we finally adapted or adopted a new uniformed policy, an IT policy on what types of cameras are going to work in our system. These have to be then retrofit or replaced, and now we're stuck with either another bill or cameras that don't work.
Councilman, these cameras are consistent with the ones that we just installed with the West Valley and Topanga bureaus. We signed that contract earlier this week. We've also installed these cameras at a number of locations utilizing the original RFP.
But we still have a number of cameras where we're putting the cart before the horse. So while we've just done those and we've purchased that equipment and installed it, we've also unraveled another problem, and that is that we don't have the uniform policies yet in place, and that is what's being analyzed. When do we think we're going to have that report?
And I don't have an answer for you, maybe in a couple of weeks, but I will tell you that the cameras that we are purchasing today with Topanga, they are within the standards that we are going to present.
Well, and that might be an opportunity to test them to see if they're working, so it'd be my recommendation to go ahead and hold this and not move forward until we either have those ones installed and in place so we don't get further down the problem, we have a bigger issue to fix. We can once those are in place, and if they're functioning, we're not having any problems, great, we can move forward. But we have at least uniformed policies in place to address all the ones that aren't working. And so it'd be my recommendation not to move forward on this in light of all the other issues that we're dealing with in these cameras until we come up with that uniformed and comprehensive plan.
What's the warranty on this proposed system?
The warranty is 3 years, sir.
Okay, now that's another problem, because some warranties are 1 year with this same company, some are 2 and now 3. The commission originally wanted 5-year warranty. So I find this 3. I understand West Valley and Topanga, we had to squeeze for 2-year warranty, and now this is 3-year warranty. There's a lot of inconsistency, and that troubles me, that some are getting 1 year, and we know what's happening with the systems that are going down where there's no warranty and the city doesn't have any money to fix them. There's got to be some consistency. And if this is 3-year, why isn't West Valley and Topanga 3-year? Why are they so inconsistent with their warranty system if it's the same company and the same technology? It makes no sense, because when those systems go down, IT does not have the personnel or the funds, and we know what happened. The previous analysis, they're not in use. And are these going to be able to be moved? Is that part of the contract, portability?
No, sir. These are actually around the perimeter and within the park,
Okay.
specifically for Harvard Park. The warranty, when the design proposals were actually presented to Councilmember Park, he opted to go with the 3 year as opposed to the 1 year, and he eliminated camera. And we felt we had adequate coverage through the in and out the perimeter of the park with 5 cameras.
Well, this company is making a lot of money from the city of Los Angeles, whether it be Foothill Division or Mission Division or West Valley or Topanga, now this project, and I don't think we're really negotiating in behalf of the taxpayers to get the best deal. What we need to do is squeeze these people to get the best deal for the taxpayers. And the warranty of 3 years to me is reasonable. A 1 year warranty is a joke. And some of the installations have had 1 year warranty. The commission, when they started with this, they wanted a 5-year warranty. So somehow, and I support what the chair is saying on this, somebody needs to go back to these folks and say, we want to extend these warranties.
So we have a number of
Have faith
issues.
in their system, then it will work.
I'd like to add that to it as well then, and we have a number of issues. But I think we need at least some technology baselines and strategies, as well as a policy on what types of cameras. We should only accept them if they are going to hook up to our system. What additional cost would it take to do that? I mean, it's no point in having cameras we can't monitor or that they're not going to hook up to our system. So we've got to have those policies in place first before we just continue further down the road of expanding the problem. And so we'll hold this in committee until we have the report back, and then we can make some of those informed policy decisions. And that will be the recommendation, unless there are any other changes or recommendations.
And while one hand doesn't know what the other is doing, DOT has established a sophisticated system citywide. DOT, Aztec, but they've got cameras mounted at major intersections throughout the city of LA. Automatic traffic surveillance control system.
That's the Indian brother.
Someone needs to talk to DOT, and they've got their center across the street to find out exactly if this parallels with that. Because
Shouldn't say
Racer
that,
can tap into the DOT system citywide on an emergency situation. We need to make sure that we've got something that's compatible and not disjointed. You can't put a 15-inch tire on a 17-inch rim. It doesn't work. We need to make sure there's some consistency. So there's got to be some homework. It's not an isolated situation. It's got to connect, like the links of a chain. It's got to connect. So someone needs to contact them, and also sell plan about extending that warranty and having some consistency, because they're making a lot of money off the city of Los Angeles. They need to give something to the benefit of the taxpayers who are picking up the tab. And if I was negotiating it, it'd be a 10-year warranty. Thank you.
Mr. Clerk, what does that take us?
That concludes your agenda. You have no speakers for general public comment.
Great, thank you. That'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much.